Hey guys, it's Thursday, January 19th, and this is Newswave. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about today, but I guess we'll get started with the Fire Emblem Nintendo Direct. It took place yesterday at 5 p.m. my time, which is Eastern, 2 p.m. on the West Coast. And the Direct brought us more, I think, announcements than most of us were ready for. It actually announced technically 4 Fire Emblem-themed games. So we get the standard mobile game that they've been talking about for a while that's been in development. Looks like it's going to be a freemium style game where you basically have an army that you build by buying currency or earning currency, so there is a way to skip forward in the game by paying actual money for it. And this leads me to believe that it will be a free download. It's going to be February 2nd. According to their tweet, it's also showing up on iOS devices at the same time as Android, both of which February 2nd. And it looked okay. Honestly, if it's a free game, could be some fun. Has the standard strategy-based RPG-style elements to Fire Emblem. It could be interesting to at least try out, and it's free, so you can just download it and play it. It's not like Mario Run where you actually had to pay $10 after like the first 2 levels. The next announced game was actually a 3DS game, which is, I think, caught some people off guard. So we get Fire Emblem Echoes, which is coming to the 3DS in May for the United States, and it looks like a Fire Emblem game. It's actually really cool. If you were a fan of the older Fire Emblem game on the 3DS, you would probably like this new one. So I think a lot of people were caught off guard with that, since with the Switch coming, a lot of people are concerned about the 3DS's future. Well, to me, this kind of extinguished some of those, fears, because a new Fire Emblem game is on the way. Then we also get hit with the Fire Emblem Warriors. Actually saw very, very brief gameplay, but we did see it. It looked good. That will be out in the fall of this year, according to them. And then they gave us an unnamed game from the Fire Emblem mainline series, so it's going to be a straight up Fire Emblem game on the Switch that is going to be announced further. It is due out in 2018. Maybe we see something about it at E3. Maybe we see a Nintendo Direct later in the fall. It's hard to say, but that one won't be out till next year, which I think is fine, since you need to have games to look forward to. Make sure you check out the video I did yesterday if you want a more in-depth look at it. It's interesting to note that Nintendo is doing a lot of future announcements, like very far in the future, since we're getting a lot of stuff already announced for the holidays, and it's January, and that one is even next year. So it's interesting to see Nintendo do this. I think they've realized that they cannot leave us with nothing to look forward to at all, so they are spreading out tons of releases. They've said 80 games are already in development for the Switch, which is a lot. So we're going to have to keep an eye out on any of these releases that start popping up. I feel like they're going to start popping up a lot now. There's kind of a funny bit of news going around recently, kind of blew up on the internet. At the Nintendo event for the Switch, they did that whole thing in Tokyo, Japan, obviously, where you go in and play after their announcements, and they actually ended up spotting the Sony executive. You may recognize him. You'll see him here, Shuei Yoshida. Now, I assume a lot of these people are invited to the events. I'm sure Nintendo executives go to Sony events and vice versa. Microsoft shows up other places for, Sony's events as well, or Nintendo events. And this makes sense. You want to scout out your competitors. There's also a chance, honestly, that Mr. Yoshida is a fan of Nintendo as well. It's always possible. I mean, these are games, guys. It's not like life or death or anything. You don't hold grudges over this stuff. So there's a chance he might just be a fan of Nintendo even. We all grew up with it. We all enjoyed Nintendo, obviously. So there's also a chance that he is getting ready and scouting out what their competition is going to be in the future, so he knows what Sony needs to look out for going forward. I think at this point they have conceded the handheld market to Nintendo because the Vita is just about dead. So maybe they were trying to get some cues if they do end up deciding to do something portably with any Vita successor. I doubt it, though. I think they are firmly content with home console and VR possibilities going forward. It's just funny to see one of the Sony executives obviously there taking pictures all over the place. People were reporting that it looked like he was having a good time as well. So, it's just fun to see someone from, I guess, enemy lines come over and just kind of hang out and enjoy an event. And Nintendo did announce on Twitter today that Mario Run is coming to Android, and that's happening in March. I assume it's going to just be packed in there with the Switch releasing with all those games and everything that are coming out during the launch window with Zelda. And put Mario Run out on Android as well. That will help boost sales overall for their bottom line. That's going to be a very big month for Nintendo. New system, Zelda, Mario Run to Android. So I think they're just trying to pack some stuff in there along with that launch lineup just to help bolster their revenue that they then report for. I assume that would be I'm trying to think if that would fall into the second quarter or first quarter. I believe that would still fall into first quarter earnings, but that will just help that that bottom line that they report to investors after investing so much money into the development of the Switch. And if you have not been following the Zenimax and Facebook Oculus debacle here, where Zenimax is essentially suing them over Oculus, there's a whole massive story. I mean, it's probably pages of storytelling here. But what's happening, Zenimax is suing Facebook, who now owns Oculus, for basically stealing the idea from them or using company resources of Zenimax to develop the Oculus. Zenimax is insinuating, accusing Facebook of snatching up employees that had knowledge that were working on this Oculus, especially people like John Carmack, who are very, very smart. I think he was a large contributor to different things at id Software for Doom and just technology. He's a very smart guy. If you want to just kind of get confused for a while, go look at his Twitter page. He puts out some of the craziest tweets I've ever seen. So Zenimax is claiming that the Oculus, especially the early stages, were developed at Zenimax essentially under their employees working on it, developing it, and they're claiming that tens of millions of dollars were used in their company resources to develop something that Facebook has now owned by buying it out. And Zenimax is essentially looking to stop. They could, if they win, have an injunction to stop sales of the Oculus Rift altogether, at least for now. I assume Facebook would be able to pay out some sort of money to keep that from happening. Maybe they say, hey, stop selling Oculus Rifts or give us $100 million. And I think Mark Zuckerberg pretty much called them out on that in court. So when Zuckerberg was asked about Zenimax, I believe this was when he was doing like a pre-trial, he goes, who? So he has no idea who Zenimax was, which is a little hard for me to believe considering I have a feeling Zuckerberg is not, I feel like he plays video games, so he knows Zenimax makes, obviously, they own id, so if you've played Rage or you've played Oblivion or anything like that, you're playing a Zenimax game. It's right on the box art. But Zuckerberg's going to do what he does and pretend like he's better than the people he's going up against, which when you become rich, I guess that's what happens, especially when you own most of the internet like he does at this point with him, Microsoft, YouTube. These are the people that pretty much own the internet, let's be honest. They own our eyeballs, they own our information. But Mark Zuckerberg feels like they've done nothing wrong. And, you know, you can look at it either way. It's a pretty cool read. I would just look it up. There's so many articles out there, so many about this. But it looks like Zenimax does actually have a case, but Zuckerberg does not care. He's just waiting to write a check, I assume, because he does basically go on to say, look, they're here for a payout. We know that. It's obvious. He's trying to point it out to the judge. Look, it's obvious. They're here for a payout on something that's ridiculous. So you should throw this case out because they are essentially here to steal my money. But the trial is going to commence this month in January, and we'll probably have a verdict maybe by the end of the month, unless somebody appeals, or who knows. These things can go on forever. They take forever to get to trial, and they take forever to actually finish. More than likely, it'll just be a settlement. Zenimax will get some kind of payout, and life will go on. In fact, Zuckerberg's already talking about the future of VR. He says, look, VR is probably going to need still another 5 to 10 years before it is good, and it's ready for market to where the mainstream can consume it. And I honestly agree with him. I think it's close to 10 years until we have good VR, which could be as, small as these glasses, probably never that small, at least not for a long time, but at least something that is easier to wear rather than this massive toaster looking thing. And VG Charts went ahead and reported the first week sales for Dead Rising 4. Keep in mind, guys, VG Charts is kind of like the Wikipedia of sales figures. They can be off sometimes. I feel like sometimes they also estimate sales. However, they are usually in the ballpark. I don't think they're ever exact, even though they try to be. So I'm just going to give you guys a ballpark number here, despite them going into the thousands. So they have reported essentially that Dead Rising 4 has sold 200,000 units in its first week. Now, 200,000 units is actually not very good, considering it was released in December. The first week of December, we have Dead Rising 4. It's an established franchise, so it should have sold more, and it's actually sold less than half of what Last Guardian sold in its first week, something that most people didn't even know was coming out. So what does this tell us? This kind of tells us that some of Microsoft's exclusives are not as strong as they probably think they are, and they need to really figure out how to make some new exclusives. I know Halo sells well, but they cannot release Halo every single year. That's like, Halo's like a 3-year cycle at this point. And Halo Wars will sell, but it's still not the premium Halo franchise that they want. I know Forza, it's still a good racing game. There's a lot of Forza fans and diehard fans even. And that's great, but you need to have a nice stream of exclusives. This is what people are really annoyed with companies like Nintendo about not getting third-party support, but Microsoft really needs to back up and work on their exclusives. They have the third-party support, obviously, but they need to get exclusives, and they need to stop handing every single exclusive off to the PC, because that's just making the Xbox a Steam machine, I guess, that runs Windows. Speaking of that annoyance, they're doing just that with Resident Evil 7. So you can cross-buy, you can have an option where you buy it for the PC and the Xbox One, and that's it. So you pay, I assume, once and you have it for both. And I don't know if the price is any different. I know at one point it was $80 for, I want to say it was like Gears, where you get it for both. Or is that Forza? It might have been Forza. But I believe this time they're going to make it so you can get it for $60 and you get it on both systems. Now, Microsoft does not care if you play it on Windows or you play it on the Xbox. And that's very telling to me about the Xbox and how high a priority it actually is for Microsoft. Because let's be honest, investors have voiced opinions in the past about how they do not like the Xbox and they prefer the software side with Windows because, of course, once you're done developing Windows, you just sell software. You're not building software to then sell to somebody. The Xbox is always going to have a cost attached to it, where Windows makes up its money very quickly despite all the development time by selling to big businesses. And then whenever they sell stuff to consumers like you and me, when we build a computer or we upgrade, is just tons of profit and gravy on top of that. So Microsoft's future with the Xbox, I think, is iffy, and it's going to be interesting going forward when we see companies like Nintendo and Sony have vast amount of exclusives at this point. The one thing you can't argue about either of them is they have a lot of exclusives when compared to the Xbox. One just happens to have also all the third-party support in Sony, whereas Nintendo needs to work on that. But if you want to get Resident Evil 7 for your computer, you can buy it for both. You can get it for a computer and you can get it for your Xbox with one purchase. That's good, I guess. Honestly, I guess it's more value as well. But again, the Xbox is still being devalued as a game console, since if you have a computer, why would you play it on your Xbox? I don't know. I just really hope that the new Halo game is only on the Xbox and they do not move that over to the PC as well, as much as I would like to put it on my PC. I understand these exclusives, these true exclusives are important to consoles. So we'll see. I don't know where Microsoft's head is right now. And that's it for Newswave today, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you next time, tomorrow morning, for more Newswave.